Hello everybody and welcome to SMAM Listens, a channel where we talk about, listen to and review music. And today we are on video 4 of this little 5-video series we have here where I'm reacting to your recommendations in the comments. So if you don't know what this series is, you guys have left me a lot of recommendations, particularly on the older videos, so before I had a little hiatus. And what I've been doing is going through, checking the most requested ones, and choosing to listen to them in this video series right here. So I've already listened to a Sweet Trip album, I've listened to Oceanic by Isis, and I've listened to Terminal Redux by Vector. But I think in terms of sheer quantity of requests for me to listen to more of a certain band's music, I don't think anything beats Jesus Lizard. I reacted to their album Ghost, I think about 7-8 months ago now. People really liked the reaction, but more than that, people wanted me to react to more Jesus Lizard albums, because in that video, on first reaction, I really loved Goat. I really loved that album. Okay, I have some confessions to make. I don't know, I loved it on first listen, but on subsequent listens, it just started to wear off for me. The hype started to wear off for me almost totally. Like, I think I was really bowled over on first listen by just the sheer amount of energy that the band had, and I was more willing to forgive some of the parts that I didn't like as much about the album. But I don't know, the more I listened to it, the more I found myself wanting for sort of better, like, more cohesive and well-written songs. I found myself wanting better vocals too. The screaming sort of thing that David Yao does, it's good and it works for them, but after a certain point, I sort of got a bit tired of it. And I sort of got tired of Steve Albini's production too. Especially on streaming services, for some reason the albums are really quiet. Like it's you need to pump it up to get any sort of, you know, push from it, any sort of aggression from it or punch. And I don't know, it's just the way everything's recorded is sounds a bit too like empty or something. I don't know, it's hard to describe. But a lot of things about the album really wore off for me. It was a 9 out of 10 at one point. Now it's probably a 6 or a 7. So I think the moral of the story is careful what you wish for, because I'm going to react to another Jesus Lizard album today. I'm particularly going to react to the album Liar, which comes directly after Goat. And yeah, all I'll say to the people that requested this, be careful what you wish for, because if it's doing more of the same, there's a good chance I won't like it. So what I'm looking for this album, I guess, is just better like melodies and more cohesive start to finish songs instead of these like little snapshots, like bursts of energy that wear off in their catharsis after about 4 or 5 listens, in my opinion. That's just been my experience with Jesus Lizard so far. I'm okay, I guess, with the same sort of production, though I'm not a big fan of how like quiet it sort of everything sounds, and compressed too. Everything's pretty compressed on the streaming version. I like his drum sounds though. I like Steve Albini's drum sounds. So if you could keep that sort of sound, maybe give the like guitar and the vocals a bit more bass. Like I think it needs a lot of low end. There's a lot of mids and trebles on Go. So I'd like something a bit, you know, further down in the EQ spectrum to balance things out a bit more. And I don't know, overall I'm hoping for an album that has more staying power than Goat for me, because I loved Goat on first listen. It bowled me over, but the more I listened to it, the more the enjoyability of it wore off for me. I found myself wanting nuances that unfortunately weren't there. I'm hoping the nuances are on this album. Now, just to make myself clear, I don't hate Jesus Lizard at all. In fact, I don't hate Goat at all. As I said, about a 6 or a 7 out of 10 album. It's a decent album. I just found myself wanting more from it than it gave me. So what we're going into with Liar is hopefully an album that gives me all of those things. So this is 10 tracks, about 34 minutes long, I believe I read. Mostly in the short sort of region. Longest track is 5 minutes 42, which I believe is as long, if not longer, than anything on Go. So this is a short album. It's going to be a lot of bursts of energy again by the looks of it. I just hope the songs are more comprehensive and well written. But anyway, so let's get on to it. Let's listen to it now. This is track 1 is called Boilermaker, 2 minutes 14 long, so it's very, very short. I will say Them Comes Dudley is a very effective opener for an album. So if this track 1 has about the same sort of cathartic staying power that one does. I think I really enjoy it as an opener because Them Comes Dudley has actually emerged as one of my favourite songs on the album going forward. In fact, probably like my first or second favourite. I still think Mouth Breather is up there on GOAT for me, but that track is probably the only one that's actually gone up in my estimation over time. So fingers crossed, track 1, Boilermaker, does the same thing. Again, 2 minutes 14 long. This is Liar by Jesus Lizard. Let's hear it. I'm excited. And crossing my fingers. Let's go. Whoa. Okay, that's sudden. What time signature is that? I think it's 7/8, is it? Yeah, it's very quiet. They need to master it a bit up, I think. His vocals are different here. There's less sort of like atonal screaming and more sort of melodic flow to it. Like that almost has sort of a rapping quality to it. He honestly sounds more like Anthony Kiedis or something from Red Hot Chili Peppers than he does like a post-hardcore screamer so far on this track, which is interesting. See, that's Red Hot Chili Peppers. I know these guys came, I think earlier in the scheme of things, didn't they? That's a cool bass line. That's okay, nice guitar line and bass here. Back to the screaming. Okay, so that was Boilermaker. Oh god, what to say about that? Obviously didn't enjoy that as much as I did Them Comes Dudley. Obviously there's less to it than there is with a track like Them Comes Dudley. I question a few things about that. I question what the use is of having that as an opening track, because that very much felt like a sort of mid-album track, or maybe like track 2 or 3. That had the same sort of energy as something like Mouth Breather or Nub on GOAT. But I think starting off the album, I would have liked something more fully fledged, something more tightly composed, I guess, which Them Comes Dudley is and was. But that was very much a burst of energy. That was just, it was there, it was in your face, then it was out of your speakers before you even knew it. Like, it very much felt its length in the sense that it really felt 2 minutes long. Like, that didn't feel like a full intentional song to me. I don't know. I got weird vibes from that. I also think the production's a lot muddier than it was on GOAT. Like, with GOAT, a lot of things sounded very... there was a lot of separation in the mix between the different elements. I'll just say that. And that was actually to its detriment, in my opinion, at points. Because everything sounded a bit like plasticky after a few lessons. Everything sort of, not really the drums as much, but particularly the bass and the guitar. It sort of sounded a little bit like plasticky and hollow. The more I listened to it, but on this it doesn't sound like that at all. This is much more muddy, much more muddy. Everything sort of jumbles together more, which fixes some of my problems with it. As I said, that had more like that felt more like a band playing live in a room. You know, that had more of that sort of band energy than Goat by Jizzlers, the previous album, did. Because that album sounded like everything was sort of overdubbed. Like, it didn't really sound like they were playing this song in this room together. But here they very clearly were. Everything was very muddy. The downside of that, of course, is that everything was very muddy and it was sort of hard to pick out individual elements to that. So for that reason, I can't really pick out an individual riff or something that I love from that. There was a bass riff at about halfway through that was quite cool, and with this shimmery guitar over it. But I think a cleaner production would have made that a bit more memorable for me, probably. But on the same token, it fixes a lot of the problems I did have with Goat. So I know those two things do balance each other out, I guess, in a sense. Maybe that's something I'll come to appreciate more as I listen to this album more. And yeah, David Yow's delivery was a lot cleaner, a lot more rhythmically sort of precise, I'd say, than pretty much anything on Goat. As I said, he sounded a bit like Anthony Kiedis at points there, just with that flow. Which is an interesting thing to point out. I mean, at that point in their career, Red Hot Chili Peppers were very much this style of music. They were very much like, punk influences, ska influences, all of that. And yeah, I just don't have a whole lot to say about that. I'm really struggling for things to say about that track. I'm going to reserve my judgment on this album as a whole because it's been one track. It was 2 minutes long and we're getting into more meaty material. But I guess as a whole, I just question that opening the album because it wasn't especially catchy or memorable, in my opinion. So we're going to move on to track 2. This is called Gladiator. Now, this is more fully fledged. It's a bit longer. It's 3 minutes 59 long, so more in, less sketch territory and more fully formed through written song. I hope this is a banger. And I hope there's more song to it than there was on Boilermaker or indeed a lot of Goat. So let's get into it. This is track 2. Very repetitive, I like that. A lot of tension here that's being built to something good, I think. Okay, that was subtle integration of the guitar there. Okay. I don't mind this so far at all. It has a bit of a push to it, I like that. It needs to be turned up though. Their mastering engineer should have been fired. Not loud enough, but whatever. He's gone back to his old sort of speak song style vocals though here, very much. a big fan of that bit, but everything else is pretty good. Yeah, okay. Much better than the first track. Much better than the first track. Should have been the first track. Like, I think something as tense and slowly developing as that would have made a killer first track, and I don't know why they decided to put Boilermaker there when that was sort of made to be like an interlude in the middle of the album. Yeah, no, I think there was a lot to like about that track. I mean, still suffers from some of the things that have put Jesus Lizard down, in my opinion, over time. But, like, objectively on a lot of levels, that really works. Like, one thing I love is the repetition. It just slowly builds across the track. The pulsing just slowly keeps going through the track, and then layer upon layer upon layer get added to it one by one until it builds to that huge world-ending climax at the end there. I think that was really effective songwriting and use of dynamics from this band. Certainly, I think a lot more nuanced and subtle than pretty much anything on GOAT, because GOAT is like in your face and immediate. Straight up. I think something like that was very, yeah, as I said, very like a track of slow build-ups of little details and things. Of course, based around this ultra simple and ultra repetitive little rhythmic figure, but there was a lot of complexity there for something so simple at its core. I mean, I think with some Jesus Lizard tracks, they're left wanting for a better riff sometimes, like a really, really just good riff or good melody running through the thing. I think that didn't really have that. Like, it didn't have this clear riff. All it had was pulse and, noise and layers. And sometimes I think that's all a song needs to be perfectly enjoyable. But I think that's part of my problem with Jesus Lizard. I think to make these songs exceptional, like, beyond, a lot of other post-hardcore bands or, like punkish, bluesy bands like this, I think to really make this band exceptional, you need something a bit more melodic over the top, because a lot of these tracks do just function as bursts of pure energy. That was a burst of pure energy, but there was a lot more nuance to it, as I said, than a lot of other Jesus Lizard songs. So I respect that. I wish it did have a better riff, though, like just a clean, nice riff over the top of it, but oh well. I think as time goes on, I just don't like David Yale's vocals as much, because they work with the song. Like, they work with what they're going for, but I just don't really like what Jesus Lizard is going for, generally. Okay, no, that's not true. I like it, I just don't think it has that much staying power. Because you don't have any, like, really exceptional riffs, and you have no real melodic vocals or anything. On that side of things. Like, all David Yale's main modes are occasionally that sort of rapping flow like we heard on Boilermaker, or you have the shouting and raving and screaming like a crazy homeless man. And that's fun in and of itself. Like, that works on many levels. But, I don't know, it's just, since he's not carrying the melody and the instruments aren't carrying the melody, there isn't really much to speak of in that department. And I think something like that could really elevate this band to another level, like something with a more melodic edge, whether it be in the bass or the guitar, or David Yao attempting some clean vocals. I think that's probably my biggest problem with this band, to be honest, on the whole. And it also hints at the thing that they really could do to make their whole shtick exceptional. But yeah, I mean, was that much better than Boilermaker? Absolutely. Was it comparable to a lot of the best on GOAT? I'd say 100%. I think that's a very similar track to something like Mouth Breather in theory, but there's a lot more nuance and style to it in execution, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, I think that goes up against the best that GOAT has to offer. I think that was, on its face, with what we were given there, a pretty strong track. but it's just with this band, they could be doing some stuff to make it really more exceptional. So let's keep moving through. Track 3 is called The Art of Self-Defense, and it's 2 minutes 38, which is considerably shorter than the Gladiator, about the same as Boilermaker. That's the sort of track length I'd expect at this part of the album. I still really wish Gladiator was the opener, though. I think that would have really opened it with a bang. But, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Oh well, this is track 3, The Art of Self-Defense. Let's go. Let's hear it. Might have to turn it up again, because the mastering engine is stuck. Not a bad riff. Okay, that's actually a decent chord sequence. I actually don't mind that. I actually like that. I like the da 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 da. More tension. More tension. I like that. Okay. Didn't like that little fade there as much, but I like this. Okay. Okay. Yeah, very similar story to Gladiator, actually. There was a lot of subtlety there and a lot of slowly building tension in that. Now, I think those are sort of two things that you do not find on Goat at all. So I think this album is already differentiating itself just a little bit from Goat, in that Goat was like Boilermaker, but for an entire album. You know, there was very little subtlety there. It was all at 100 all the time. Like, there was no, build to things. There were no, like, big climaxes for the most part or anything. It was just, it was at 110 the whole time. But this, on a track like that, for example, also on Gladiator, like, you start off with this bass line and this drum groove, which is pretty decent. And then slowly you'd add layers. You'd add the guitars would double it. Then sometimes the guitars would just play, straight eights, like da 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 da, which adds a real palpable tension to a song like that. And yeah, it just keeps building and building, and the tension builds. I'm not sure the payoff there was worth it. I wasn't a big fan of like the quarter work in the refrains there, especially from the guitars. But I actually liked the quarter work in the verses, if you can call them verses in a track like that. With the way the bass moved with the chords. I think those were the chord changes there were really effective, really simple, better than the refrains. And it didn't take away from any of the tension or like the wiredness of a track like that. So I actually enjoyed that. I think that was the quite clever songwriting for the most part. However, I am thinking, the more I listen to this band, the more I think that David Yow just holds them back. like, I hear a track like that and it feels like a really strong backing track that needs an amazing, like, singer or vocal performance or just something over the top of it. Like, I don't know if that's just me sort of chafing with the style of Jesus Lizard or chafing with noise rock as an idiom or something, even though there's plenty of noise rock bands I love. So that's probably not it, but yeah, I don't know if it's just me not, like, fully letting myself, like, go into the music, but I feel like David Yao doesn't actually add anything to it. Like, I mean, the screaming and stuff, that's fine, the yelling or whatever's cool, it's cathartic in a sense, but I don't know, I just don't feel it improves or makes the track worse in any way. It's just it's the layer that I always ignore on a track like that, to be honest, and that's brutal. Like, that's harsh of me to say something like that. But it's true, I just don't enjoy his vocals. I wish they had either a more melodic vocalist or someone that had a bit more power to his voice in a more traditional, like, hardcore sense. Like, David Yao just sounds like a guy. You know, he just sounds like a guy raving over the music. And also his vocals are buried quite far back in the mix too, so it's hard to make them out at the best of times. But even if I did, I don't know, I think I need someone with more, like, gravitas over something like that, just to elevate the track to its next level. And I mean, I say it's like some of my favourite songs, I wouldn't be half as good without the vocal performances that they have. Like, Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush. If Kate Bush wasn't singing on that, it'd still be a good track, but it would not be half or a quarter of the song that it currently is. Like, vocals make or break a song a lot for me. And David Yao's vocals aren't, like, they're not offensively bad at all, but they're just a feature of the track I feel that doesn't add much. And I'd like to hear in the comments if you have any opinions on, like, why, excuse me, why you love David Yao's vocals, why you hate David Yao's vocals. I'd be really interested to hear, because I'm interested to find a way to make them really work for me. But as it stands, like, a song like that, and to an extent a song like Gladiator, does feel a bit like a backing track for something that could be much, much greater than it currently is. I don't know, am I articulating that well enough? I think that's quite a sort of existential big thing to describe a song as, or like a complex thing, but that's just the vibe I get from it. I don't know. I will say, though, that felt much more fully formed from a songwriting perspective than Boilermaker, which is a roughly equivalent length, did. I think that little bit extra time just to let the track be fleshed out a little bit more, it honestly makes all the difference on a song like that. So in the interest of continuing on and seeing where this album takes me, we're going to move on to track 4, which is called Slave Ship. Longest one so far, 4 minutes 12, so very, very meaty by Jesus Lizard standards. And yeah, I'm interested to see what they do here. I'm interested to see if David Yao changes gears a little bit. I really hope he does. This is track 4, Slave Ship. Oh, okay. Pretty good riff. Okay, I like that. Halftime. No, that's very slow by their standards. I always wonder if the title is intentional. It does have that sort of slave ship blues feel. Not a bad riff either. Not amazing, but not bad. But even so far on this, it's fun. I'm just going to say, it feels like it's missing something. I'll explain after the track's gone. vocals are still like buried by everything else. So they're not nearly as important as the rest of them. At least that's what the mix is telling you anyway. That's very punishing grinding. Like a swan sort of rhythm. Oh, we're doing key changes here. Oh, key change, alright. Maybe it's not an octave. It's not a key change. It's an octave change. I was wrong. Forgive me, guys. You have to forgive me for a lot of stuff I say about this album. Yeah, one thing I will say is that I did like that sort of massive noise swelling up at the end there, just coming from nothing and slowly coming to the front of the mix. I thought that was a really clever element there. Did help build it up to a pretty satisfying climax at the end there. God, what is there to say about that? I liked that the rhythms and the pulse was really like slow and sludgy. Like that definitely felt like you were wading through a sea of or a vat of molasses or something. That was definitely the feel that gave off. Very slow, very sludgy, very punishing. Some of the rhythms in there did remind me of things like early Swans and a bunch of no-wave bands from that era, and I wouldn't be surprised if some influence was shared there. Because, you know, that very punishing feel that a track like that had is something that, you know, I'm a big fan of, and some of my favourite no-wave bands do that. So that was pretty good. Guitar riff was pretty catchy, pretty memorable. Very sort of dissonant. Like there was something harmonically there that it wasn't, you know, like a clean major key or minor key riff. There were some weird wonky notes in there, and I think that added to the unease and the discomfort of a track like that. And just generally, actually, there's a lot of that sort of thing on this album. Like this album is less cathartic from minute one on most of its songs, and more, you know, we're gonna introduce these queasy, uneasy elements to these songs and then just slowly build them up. Whether it's sort of a faster paced, more driving and hypnotic track like Gladiator was, or whether it's like slow and queasy and tense like this is. I think that's a dominant motif on this album, sort of the building and release of the building and release of tension of musical elements, and just generally the amassing of a bunch of musical to try to slowly but surely producing a climax. I think that's a recurring motif on this album. However, even with something like that, I just can't shake the feeling that it feels like a backing track that needs someone on top of it. Like, I think the more I think about it, maybe David Yao is just the person that I have a problem with. Maybe it's not necessarily with this band. Maybe I need a singer that can, like, I don't know, just really convince me. Like, a singer with sort of gravitas that can do different things on different tracks and maybe have more of a melodic function, or maybe like scream with more conviction. I don't know. It's a hard thing to describe, but I just don't think that David Yao is adding to this album at all. Like, I don't think he's adding to this album at all. The production buries him in the background anyway, so any contribution that he would have is even further diminished. I just feel like they need an amazing vocalist to really like give the cherry on top of their admittedly strong and like meaty, stew of the rest of the song. Like, you need that little bit of salt and pepper, that little bit of coriander or spice on top of it to just push it over the edge. And I feel like that's been the case with pretty much every track on this so far. I'm becoming increasingly convinced that David Yao is the man I have beef with. But maybe the next track will amaze me. The next track is called track 5, called Puss. I suck today, fuck. But maybe the next track will amaze me. So track 5 is called Puss. 3 minutes 19 long. It's a bit shorter than Slave Ship, but, enough to develop itself pretty well. We're at the halfway point with Puss, and that's one thing I'm very grateful for with Jesus Lizard, because they make short albums. Like, they're in and out before you know it. Jesus Lizard albums. So I do appreciate that. And I don't know, I hope that it transitions us into the midpoint of the album with a bang. Let's go. It's track 5. Oh, there goes my email. Oh my god, are they like multi-track vocals? That bass line's pretty melodic, I don't mind that. This feels much like grungier. It's almost like Smashing Pumpkins there. At points. That feels like an alt rock sort of thing. Not noise rock as much. Baseline is the highlight. Oh, I like that guitar line. Ooh. Okay, that was a neat little moment. Very punchy. I like it. I think this band would be amazing live. the more I think about it. Like this, but I don't know if are they still together? I know they haven't released an album for like decades at this point, but they would really kick ass live. Like I imagine a live context where they play music like that, and you can just like jump around and pogo and like mosh and crowd surf, do whatever. Like that would kill live. I'm sure if I saw them live, I'd consider them one of the best live bands ever. I'm almost certain of that. Perhaps in the studio, I think they perhaps lose a bit of their true, staying power. Is a little hypothesis I have going on here. Not to say that that was bad at all, it was fine, but I mean, there are some bands I think that are made for that context, and that the studio context doesn't really do them any favors. And perhaps something like that is a clear example of why Jesus Lizard would be a fantastic live band and made for a live context. Because again, like that was all energy. That was all, there was, I guess it was. It was all energy, all push, less of sort of a tense build-up that the previous tracks had. And the fact that it was all energy and all catharsis makes me think that in a live context like that would absolutely blow me away. But in the studio context, listening to it, over these speakers and like sitting on a chair, there's honestly not that much from a musical perspective to really pull apart on a track like that. Highlight of that was the very melodic bass work. I particularly appreciated that in the chorus. I think that's one of the best instrumental parts actually on a Jesus Lizard song since maybe like Southmouth that I've heard. The that's really beautiful, and that melodicism did cut through the mix pretty well because everything else was quite atonal and not adhering to any sort of straightforward melodic convention. What else to say about that? I think there was a lot of influence from like the alt rock scenes and grunge scenes more than say punk or something on a track like that. Like as I said, that could be something I'd hear from like Smashing Pumpkins or Sonic Youth maybe, or one of those somewhat more well-known 90s bands. So I mean that's interesting. They very much existed in the same sort of scene, so definitely makes sense. But on the whole, I have roughly the same sort of things to say as I do with the previous tracks, even though my thoughts about that differ from the previous tracks, and even though it's more immediately cathartic like track 1 than the more reserved build-ups of track 2 to 4. I still think they need someone other than David Yao to really give the track the push it needs, because it genuinely sounds like almost all these tracks so far have genuinely sounded like a really strong backing track that needs a really strong singer over it, and I just don't think they have that. I don't know what my problem is, but I just don't think that they have that. And the other problem is because I can't make out any of the words he's saying. Like it's just a lot of it's just nondescript, like yelling and screaming, which works in some contexts. Like give me a good metal screamer any day of the week, because at least you get a lot of like really chunky defined riffs and things on that, and generally a lot of complexity. But with his vocals, like on some tracks on Goat, you can hear what he's saying. Like on Southmouth, he actually not Southmouth. Southmouth to an extent, but also like, oh god, what's a good example? Like Mouth Breather or something. You can really make out clearly what he's saying. On a track like that, he's just buried so far in the back of the mix, like you can't make out any of his lyrics, and so that his vocals can't really be appreciated on that end of things either. So without the lyrics and without any sort of melody or anything, and especially without any like really complex and interesting things going on from the musical perspective, you just have a vocalist that doesn't feel like he needs to be there. And you have a song that sort of feels a bit unfinished, in my opinion. And the worst part is it's not unfinished at all. It's a finished song, but it doesn't feel that way. I don't know. At the halfway point of this album, my sort of worst fears about my experiences with the Jesus Lizard are sort of coming more and more true. The more I hear this, honestly. Like, the tracks are different enough. They differ from each other enough, which is a good thing. I mean, they don't really sound as homogenous as I thought they would. And some of the worst sins a band can do is make the whole album sound like just this amorphous potpourri of, you know, tracks that sound pretty much identical. And you can't say that about this album. Like, I can describe features of each track that a lot of the others don't have. But I still think my worst fear that David Yao isn't what this band needs. And my worst fear also that these tracks just do feel like really good, but somewhat generic, like stock noise rock tracks in search of that little bit of spice, like that little bit of flavour. Because as it stands, there isn't as much flavour as I would like on this album. There's a lot of, you know, things that really work well in theory, like a lot of tension on some of the tracks, a lot of change-ups within the tracks. But there's just something that's not quite there for me. And I'm pretty sure it's the vocalist, but I could be wrong and there could be something else that it's missing that I haven't thought of. I'm not sure. So track 6 is called Whirl. It's 4 minutes 19 long. They really love their one-word titles. So 4 minutes 19 long, another pretty long one, actually longest on the album so far. And then we have a stretch of sort of shorter ones, then a long one, and then a short one to end it. So yeah, kick off the second half of the album in style, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. It's track 6. Oh. 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 5, 4. Okay. Feels very Them Come style with this so far. Like a 5/4 version of that song. Sounds differently produced. Does this have a different producer? The drums sound different. They sound less reverby. This is actually very similar to Them Come Style Beat so far. As I said, it's like a 5/4 version of Them Come Style Beat. But so I can't even tell if they're vocals or not. Is that? Yeah. Okay, it's vocals. Ba-da-ba-ba. Okay, nice change up in the guitar melody there. Going up like that. That's clever. There are little moments of clever songwriting on this album that like really wow me. That it's just not enough on its own. I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, what does that add to anything? Like, man, that doesn't add anything. I'm sorry. I do like that bit. Rare moment of clean vocals. Yeah, I don't know. I think the thing I really liked about that track was sort of how the different sections moved and shifted between each other. Particularly when the guitar went from the da-da-ba-ba-ba-da-ba-ba, following that bass, which is very sort of earthy, had a very tense sound to it again. And then in that little refrain, when it just released up into the da-da-da-da, resolving itself on the one, that's a really clever songwriting thing. Really, really clever. Effectively, that's like on a micro level how to create catharsis, like on a micro, but also very textbook level. You know, you do this really tense atonal riff in the verses, then in the chorus, go up, you know, like literally ascend to the heavens like that, ascend to the one, and I don't know, just release all that tension. I think that's a very effective thing, and I think this band, I should say, like, as in the band, I mean, like the instrumental players on this, they're really strong players. They're really good at what they do. They're technically proficient. The guitarist on this in particular is very technically proficient. The drummer knows exactly what pattern to use at any given time. I think the drummer is, you know, like born for noise rock, you know, born for a genre like this. And yeah, he knows how to expertly deploy, you know, moments with the open hi-hat, how to do these slower, sludgier grooves, then a faster sort of double time groove at point. He really, you know, understood the assignment on pretty much every Jesus Lizard track by the sounds of it. Bassist is good too. Like, they're very capable musicians and they have some good ideas, but again, I'm like a broken record. It just needs a bit of spice. Like, almost all of the tracks on this just need a little summon, you know, to add to it. And it just doesn't have it. And it's annoying because there's, like, nothing offensively bad at all about this album. It's just, almost every track so far, maybe, exception of, I'd say, like, track 2, Gladiator, and also, to an extent, Slave Ship. Every track has just struck me as like decent. Like it's just a bunch of 6 out of 10s that need a little bit something extra to really ascend up. And the good news about Goat, I think a lot of those tracks do manage to have some spice. Like there are some tracks on that album, particularly something like Mouth Breather, where I think David Yao does actually add to things. Because that track is like so in your face, you know, so driving and jumping in your face, that his quite sort of clear vocals and easily discernible message on that really do stand out and add to things. But those moments are few and far between on this album in particular. But yeah, I think there are a few more wow moments on Ghost that I'm just not getting as much on this album, which I really hope changes as we keep moving forward, because this band and this album has a lot of potential. Track 7 is called Rope, which is one of my favourite low songs on I Could Live in Hope. Pretty much the complete opposite band to this, but hopefully it'll be as good as that track. I doubt it, but we'll see. Yeah, so track 7 is called Rope, 2 minutes 18, which makes it only just longer than Boilermaker, so one of the shortest on this. I don't know. Let's hear it. Hopefully it's good. I don't know, guys. I'm sorry. Whoa! Oh, bang, bang, we're down at the rodeo. Okay. Whoa, okay. Punk. Let's do a punk. Okay. I like that. favourite track so far, I reckon. Okay, probably could use a bit of a change up at some point, but I'll forgive it. Nice little guitar moment here. Vocals are better here too. His vocals are better here. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got nothing bad to say about that. No, not a bad word to say about that. That was fun as hell. Come on. Like, that was simple, unassuming, fairly bare bones like a lot of the previous tracks. But yet extremely fun, which I don't think a lot of the previous tracks have been. That was just fun start to finish. It also had influences from other things which I haven't really touched on in this album, but touched on a lot more on Goat. So, you know, that was drenched in, obviously, hardcore punk influences. You know, with the 1, 2, ba, 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 feel, which is just pure energetic punk. But also, like, things like rockabilly and psychobilly, those sort of genres like that, you know, bands like Mission of Burma and, oh god, what are some other good ones? Like, John Spencer Blues Explosion. Often, you know, did around this time. Especially John Spencer Blues Explosion, maybe not so much Mission of Burma. But yeah, I really appreciate that. That was like a pure sort of psychobilly rhythm at the beginning, like the buddha-patta on the snare. Definitely felt like, you know, you were in some like rodeo in hell, in like Hell's version of Texas, and David Yao. David Yao is the rodeo announcer, and like the main event is, you know, this big fiery black horse against this big charging smoky bull. Really, really effective. I think that was the one point in the album where David Yao's vocals really worked, because they weren't as random and sporadic as they were on a lot of the previous tracks. Like, he just followed the beat. He was going ba 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 like that on pretty much every line for a lot of it. And I really appreciate that. There was a bit more a sort of like uncontrolled order, if that makes sense. I know it's a pure contradiction of terms, but like, you know, chaotic order to that I really appreciated. And I think his vocals at a point, he gave off sort of more like almost Les Claypool vibes at a point in that, which I think is different from the vibes he gives off on almost every other track here. So yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate what he added to the track. I really appreciate that the, you know, as I said, the rockabilly sort of influences and psychobilly influences on a track like Southmouth, for instance, on Goat. I really appreciate that they're out here in full force. And as I said, that was simple, unassuming, didn't try to be anything more than it was. And it had vocals that added to it. And the net result was, even though I believe was it the shortest or the second shortest on the album? Even though it's second shortest track on the album, somehow it managed to sound the most complete, and certainly from where I'm sitting, the most enjoyable. I loved that. I mean, were there any super memorable, you know, guitar parts in that, or super memorable bass parts? No, there weren't. But the rhythm was super memorable. The drummer did a great job and had fantastic endurance there. David Yao's part was like just incredibly fun. Honestly, what more could you want on a Jesus Lizard song? Like, seriously. Was it as good as the Low song Rope? That's a tough debate. But certainly I think, in my opinion, and this is going to be a rare opinion, but I think that was the most enjoyable track on the album so far. Maybe not best, you know, from a songwriting perspective, But as I said, I think I enjoyed that more than anything else on this. Let's hope there are more tracks that have that sense of unabashed fun, going forward. Track 8 is called Perk, 2 minutes 30, so a bit longer. Yeah, fingers crossed, as I said, more fun, or something, if they can really, do a fully fledged, well-composed song with good vocals, then do that too, but I don't think that's their strong suit. So, in the absence of that, I'm hoping for more unassuming fun. Let's go. This is track 8. Good bass line. I think the bassist is the MVP of this album, to be honest. The guitarist was the MVP of Go. That song's got a funky sort of swagger to it that I actually don't mind. Okay, that's the first time I've been able to make out anything you said there. Almost a blues movement of the bass there, like a 1-4-5 or something in that bass. I mean, honestly, a lot of my criticisms verbatim from a lot of the songs earlier, can be said about that. The bass line was really good. The bass line was definitely the highlight of that. It had as I said, a funky sort of swagger to it, like the burr. I liked how it jumped up to that quite upper register note there. Yeah, the bass line was good, and the way it moved with the chords was kind of effective and cool, and then eventually came down to the first chord in the sequence. I appreciated all of that. But there was nothing really else memorable about that. I mean, I appreciated that it was in 3/4, which is, they like, especially on this album, I'm finding, to play with weird sort of time signatures and things. And we've had 5/4 not long ago, and now we're into this 3/4, and that's not something you see in a lot of noise rock and, hardcore and punk blues and stuff like that. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that they do experiment on that end of things. But otherwise, was there much memorable about that track other than the fact, it was in 3/4 and there was a cool bass line? Oh, and the fact that I could make out one of the lyrics he sung for the first time. Take off your heels or shoes if you're going to dance, something like that. Is there anything memorable other than those 3 things? Not entirely, in my opinion. So yeah, just to repeat very briefly, my only criticisms are it's like a 6 out of 10 song that needs a bit more spice, whether it be in the form of a really interesting riff or a better vocal performance over the top. Or, a bit more raw, aggressive energy that a track like Rope has. But in the absence of that, again, it stays as a sort of 6 out of 10. And I think this is an album that might, to be honest, end up being a bit less than the sum of its parts, because like there's a lot of 6 out of 10. I don't think there's a bad track on this so far. I think everything so far has been between rather 5 and 7 out of 10. But on a whole, that's a lot of, just decency on the album that doesn't really quite cross over into amazing territory. And I think that could possibly hurt my opinion of it as a whole. But to say that would be judging it before it's over. So we're not going to do that. We're going to move on to track 9, which is called Zachariah. This is 5 minutes 42 long. So that's huge by this band's standards. Like, that's huge, huge, huge. That rivals some of the longest on Go. So I don't know. I actually have no idea how they're going to use 5 minutes of track length, to be honest. Like, it makes sense instead of the 4-minute tracks, but 5 minutes 42, that's a while. So let's see how they use that time. This is track 9, Zachariah. Sounds like a theme to a western or something. Like a cowboy movie. Slide guitar? Sounds like it. Or he's just using a slide on his guitar. Oh, we're already a minute 20 in, so maybe they just fill out with repetition. Where this goes, it started off well. Let's see if it just builds somewhere. I heard Moses on the Red Sea, so is this like a biblical song? Okay. I don't mind this. This is very unique for this album. I actually like what this is doing. To be honest with you. That's good. That's very good. Now. Oh, it keeps torturing you. I just want it to lock into that groove. thought it was going to go full double time there. Apparently not. That's very melodic for him. So, I really appreciated that one. I think that is an example of a song that would be really benefited if I could, understand the lyrics, because, again, he is bad at enunciating things extremely well. I made out the words Moses, Red Sea, and and townspeople, I think, or townsfolk or something. I think they were the only words I made out, and I get the sense that, considering how long the track was and repetitive it was, I get the sense that there is a story there. I get the sense that there was a narrative that he was telling there that unfortunately I just couldn't make out. I don't know if it's my problems with listening comprehension or if it's, his problems with speaking clearly. So, yeah. I would like to know if you want to hit me up in the comments about what that track's about, and your sort of experiences with it and your interpretations of it. Please do, because I'm really interested. But, no, as it stands, that felt suitably epic and fully formed. I think that felt like the most... Ironically, actually, it felt like the tightest track on this album so far. Maybe except for Rope, but of the longer sort of ones, that felt like the tightest and most well-written track so far, even though it's the longest, by a good margin. I don't know, that felt just really purposeful, and it didn't feel generic either. It felt far from generic noise rock. I like how it started off so slowly. You cannot call that a punk song in any stretch of the imagination. It was slow, it was sludgy, it was like a sort of soupy, atmospheric funeral march, at the beginning there. Very similar to the feel of a song like Slave Ship, but perhaps even more extreme than Slave Ship. That was very, very soupy and liquid and viscous, which I think provided a really good, backdrop for this narrative, which I don't know what the narrative is, but for whatever the narrative is, that would provide a very good backdrop for it. I liked the slide guitar on it, or as I said, just the guitarist using a slide, added to the sort of Wild Wild West feel of a song like that, with the soaring and singing guitar notes. Which, as I said, brought to mind Ennio Morricone and a bunch of the old sort of composers from that genre. It definitely felt like this humid Louisiana bayou sort of extravaganza or experience. So I appreciated that. I did think my only letdown was that I think it would have been even cooler if, as it threatened to do at the end, if it did go into a double time feel. Because at the end there, for a while there was this section with really fast fills and aggressive riffing, but it didn't quite lock into a groove. I think for an even better climax, perhaps they could have extended that out a bit more, but had more of a consistent pulse to just really add energy and provide this amazing climax, which they can be quite good at doing sometimes. So that'd be really my only criticism about that. I think, once again, the vocals worked fairly well on that, like they did on Rope. Even, beyond the fact that there's clearly a story or a narrative there. And I don't know, that shirked a lot of the criticisms that I lob at a lot of the previous songs on this album. I enjoyed that a lot. I think it delivered what it set out to deliver. I think it came across the way they wanted it to come across. I just think, on the whole, pretty strong track. And even if it wasn't, like, catchy or memorable in that sort of sense, it was definitely one of the most fleshed out and fully formed ones on the album, and I genuinely appreciate that at this point. All the same, though, I see why it wasn't the closer, because it would have been a sort of weird anticlimactic end to this album for a really experimental and strange track like Zachariah to end it off, so I can see why they decided to end it with a track called Dancing Naked Ladies. God knows why they called it that. For track 10 to end off this album, I see why they picked, a shorter, perhaps more catchy and accessible track. It's 2 minutes 56 long, so, about average length for this album. Let's wrap things up well, hopefully. Final track on this, fairly middling album. This album that's been a little bit neither here nor there, if I'm honest. This is called Dancing Naked Ladies, track 10. Let's go. End things out. What are those noises? Is that 998 or something? Yeah, that's like a bar 4/4 and a bar 5/4. Little bit of clipping on that. Maybe that was intentional. I'm not sure. What's he singing about? Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that closer. I think that was a pretty good summary, to be honest, of a lot of my problems with this album and with Jesus Lizard in general. I think that the riffing and the drums and the bass was fine. Not amazing, it was fine. Not bad either, but I feel like it's the sort of thing I've heard them do so many times on so many other tracks. On this album and Go, like that sort of thing. I guess it had energy, and the guitarists, but I'm going to forget those guitarists. They weren't that memorable. I'm going to forget them probably in about 2 minutes. But yeah, I know it was a fine instrumental. It was fine. It was serviceable. But it just had no spice because David Yao added nothing to it. And I mean, that can be said about all but a couple tracks on this album, I think. David Yao I don't know what he added to that. Like, I don't know what he added to that track that it needed. I think it needed a lot of things, and him just, like, singing / shouting over it isn't what a song like that needed. It needed more flesh. It needed more, meat. It needed something to pad it out a little bit more. And I just think on a song like that, and, on a lot of songs on this album, like, oh God, like Perk, like Whirl, Puss, etc. On a lot of these songs, that's what it needs. It just needs a little something extra, and it has the potential to have that in like a really amazing singer, but it just doesn't have that in my opinion. I think at the end of the day, that's my biggest problem with Jesus Lizard and the last track. I'd say on the whole, this album is worse than Goat. Goat had Southmouth. Goat had Mouth Breather. I didn't realise until now there were 2 tracks with mouth in the title. That's weird. But yeah, Southmouth, Mouth Breather. Goat had Nub. Goat had Them Comes Doubly. I think all of which were better than the majority of this album, to be honest. And I think all of them had really interesting musical elements and something to really set themselves apart from the other material that Jesus Lizard had put on the album. I think that album was unequivocally better than this one. Not maybe dramatically, like I'd call that a 7 out of 10 album. This is probably like a 6 or something. And like if I was to pick on any given day, okay, which Jesus Lizard album would you rather listen to? Goat or this one, Liar? It'd be Goat any day of the week. I don't know, I felt on this just the overall quality of songwriting was lesser than Goat. And I mean, this band isn't like that. The songwriting isn't their strong suit to begin with, but on the whole, there was a lot of forgettable on this. I think the highlights were definitely Gladiator, which had a lot of, slowly accumulating tension and a real rhythmic push to it. I appreciated that. I think Slave Ship and Zachariah, which were roughly similar tracks with roughly similar feels. I think they really made good use of the band's instrumental palette. And I think particularly on Zachariah, David Yao's vocals worked a treat on pretty much the whole thing, which is a rare instance of them working a treat like that. But I don't know, I just appreciated his presence on a track like that, and also on Slave Ship, more so than pretty much anything else. And on track 7, Rope, I loved how it was just in the fast, energetic, like playful rockabilly mode the whole time. I love that style of music. I love the feel that was going for. And again, I think David Yao worked pretty well on that. Absolutely no problems with Rope in particular. And if I was to just go back to listen to like 1 or 2 tracks on this, it'd be Gladiator and Rope. Zachariah is also really good. It just makes more sense, I think, if you're like listening to it in an album context or something. If I was just to, play a couple day to day, Gladiator and Rope. But the problem is, I just think there's a lot of meh on this. There's a lot of tracks in that 5 to 6 out of 10 range. Like, you have Boilermaker, which is, I think, a weird way to start off an album. You have The Art of Self-Defense, which is fine, but does a lot of the same vague tricks that Gladiator pulls. You got Puss and Whirl, which are a bit nothing, the both of them. And then you have Perk, which is, I mean, the bass line was cool, the 3/4 was cool, but that was about it. And you had Dancing Naked Ladies, which is not a good end to the album. I think that's just an overwhelming number of, muddied, meh tracks that are in need of just that little bit extra spice or little bit extra interest somewhere in there to improve them. On the plus side, it was short. I appreciate that. Now, if that was double the length it was, I would be so dead by the end of it. And I think, there are an abundance of shorter tracks, and I sort of said at some points that, it's too short to really have much of an impact on me, but thinking back on it, that's not necessarily true. Look at a band like Minutemen, for instance, who managed to write these super short tracks, but they're all tracks that have the impact of like fully fledged 4 minutes tracks or 5 minute rock tracks with solos just in the space of 1 or 2 minutes. You know, it's possible to have a really engaging and interesting song within 2 minutes, but you just have to have really engaging and interesting parts. And I think a lot of the instrumental parts on this were really competent, but there was nothing from David Yao or nothing maybe from the guitarist riff-wise to really push it up into that upper echelon. And I think at the end of the day, that was my biggest problem. So I'm sorry for the Jesus Lizard fans that were watching this. If you like this album, I'm so sorry. Hit me up in the comments explaining why you love this album. Like, what do I need to appreciate more? What am I missing about this? Tell me what Zachariah is about. You know, I'd be really interested to hear. Tell me that I suck and, you know, I'm listening to it wrong. Tell me all of those things. I'd be really interested to read all your comments and experiences with this album. I will like and respond to hopefully every single one. So, thank you guys for watching this. Even if I didn't love the album, I'd still say it was a 5 or 6 out of 10. So we're not in disaster territory by any means. Yeah, subscribe, turn on the bell, follow this channel, watch my other videos if you're interested in this type of content. And I will see you in the next video. Jesus Lizard, maybe not forever, but who cares? Goodbye, guys.